centimeters. And in that 10 or 15 centimeters, you would get all the nutrients that are required to process it through your body. You'd get the magnesium and the zinc and the minerals, etc., that are required for making energy. So this stuff about sugar being used for energy, yes, it can be used for energy, but you don't only need glucose and sugar for making energy. You need magnesium and zinc and vitamin B and iron and oxygen, and all those things are required to make energy. And without that, we actually, when we're making energy just from sugar, you're taking those nutrients from somewhere else. And then what the body actually does is it does whatever it can to keep you going today at the detriment of your long-term health. So that's just the way the body works. So that's what we're doing. So we might feel like we're healthy today, but all the chronic diseases that exist, from dementia, Alzheimer's, neurodegenerative, Parkinson's disease, ADD, ADHD, you name it, diabetes, it's across the board, heart disease, is really a lot of it comes from a lack of nutrients. And that's why we actually just can't eat the kind of food that we eat today. We have to eat lots and lots of vegetables. That is what we were genetically programmed to eat from when we were hunter-gatherers, foragers, etc.
And one of the things I think few people realize, therefore, is the effect on behavior of the eating, apart from the effect on the negation of your body, but yes, the effect on behavior and the effect on your moods and what you think is a sweet tooth. Absolutely. They have no idea what's actually going on. Could you explain to them?
So I can explain a little bit. Basically, for example, when you're talking about mood disorders and say ADHD or something, a lot of that is to do with a disconnect between neurons. So neurons are nerve cells that actually can no longer talk to each other because we don't have the building blocks or raw materials to actually keep those neural cells healthy. And to actually make those neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Most people are conscious of what serotonin, dopamine is another mood neurotransmitter, which works sort of similarly but different. And we need to have those raw materials. We also, a lot of the fat, we've been talking for a long time about people having low-fat diets, but actually neurons and brain cells are made with fat, good, healthy fats. And if we don't have them, then we actually those cells can't communicate with each other. So that's basically what we need, the building blocks to be able to make the cells, to be able to make the neurotransmitters. And if without those, we're not going to be able to, can't make those things. So that's basically what sort of, to put it very simply, what any kind of mood or mood disorder, kind of neuron, ADD, ADHD, not able to concentrate, is that's very, very simple. There's lots of other things going on as well. But as far as the sweet tooth goes, what has actually happened is that it's just because it's habit. From childhood, we have been given, people give their babies sugar water. So we and the first foods, okay, it is true that breast milk is quite sweet, but basically when children first start to eat, what are the first foods that they start to eat? They start to eat pumpkin, fruit, pears, apples, stewed, and very often it's actually even has added sugar into it. And people have kind of got this perception that that's what babies need to eat, but that's actually not true. And there's been studies to show that if you start your children eating foods that they can actually grab in their hands, like little broccoli stems, little broccoli floret or cauliflower or a carrot stick, that they actually control themselves what food they put into it, they're less likely to get chronic diseases. One of the other problems about eating sweet is that the body has, from the mouth down to the stomach and actually even elsewhere, bitter receptors. In other words, all the way down the esophagus and the mouth, we have these receptors that that react to bitter foods. So those receptors which require things like, like lemon juice or bitter herbs and like rocket and those kind of things, actually stimulate the gastric juices. So they get the stomach acid going, they get the enzymes in your intestines moving so that they can actually start to digest the foods. Unfortunately, those enzymes and that reaction is not actually stimulated by that sweet thing. So if you're eating your food and you're eating sweet, you're slowing down. You basically the whole digestive process is slowing down. And that's why I always say to my patients, start your meal with a hot lemon and water. Some people do apple cider vinegar. And then start a salad, which is sort of traditionally some communities do that. They put some rocket in and put maybe some lemon zest or something that's going to sort of stimulate your whole digestive tract. It's also a good idea to start your meal make sure that you're enjoying your meal, because you can eat a beautiful meal, but if you're not digesting it properly, well, you're not actually going to be using up the nutrients that are required. That's the reason why you're eating. So I think that's basically sort of what I kind of... And people need to be do mindful eating. You need to think about what you're eating. You need to be grateful for what you eat. You need to say to yourself that this food is healing for me. And I think people just sort of stuff their faces with food just for the sort of sake of eating. And because they eat such nutrient deficient food, the body just is always hungry, which is one of the things that leads on to obesity as well. So, the reason why people want to eat so much of those refined foods is because they are nutrient deficient and the cells need nutrients. So they are saying subconsciously to you, give me food, give me more food, give me more food. And that's why people are just getting kind of fatter and fatter, because they're eating things like sugar, samp, white rice, bread, pizza, pasta. That's kind of like the main part of their meal, which is not what we should be doing.
Another thing is that I'd like you to tell us a bit about is cancer. We've noticed that the amount of cancers have grown astronomically since we started becoming such a big battery farm meat-eating group of people. And but I know it's something to do with the additives in the food as well too. Yeah. But there's also something else that I heard round about the sort of alkalinity state of your body and what to maintain to try and prevent cancer. Okay. Since a lot of us know that what we're doing is wrong, could you explain to us, first of all, what sort of things might be cancer increasing? And also, can you also try and explain to us what we could do to make a situation that cancer cells won't like?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's known that cancer cells love sugar. So, in fact, they use sugar as a diagnostic sometimes. A sugar solution is a diagnostic to find where the tumor is. Why do they do that? Because the sugar will go to where the tumor is or the cancerous growth is, and they'll be able to find it because they color the solution, and they'll be able to find exactly where it is. So, that's not rocket science. If that's what's happening, then we know that. So also there's the acid alkalinity thing is really also to do with, as you say, the meat we eat. But it's not so much that we eat meat. It's the kind of meat that you're eating. So if you're eating meat that's eating grains, that's eating genetically modified foods and grains, which are, by their very nature, what is called omega-6 rich, because grains, generally speaking, have got a lot of omega-6s in them. And in years gone by, we used to have a ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. Those are essential fatty acids that are required for pretty much every cell in the body. But really, the neurons in the brain cells, etc., use a lot of that. So if you've eating something that's like more eating grain-fed, you're eating grains, then you're actually inflaming your body. And when you're inflamed, because you're eating this omega-6 rich, because omega-6s are generally inflammatory, which also contributes to cancer. So omega-3 rich foods are anti-inflammatory and omega-6s are inflammatory. So we've gone to a total wrong balance of those, which are, so basically we used to have about the same, equivalent, 1:1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. We are now, apparently a colleague of mine did a study where she discovered that South Africans went anything from 1:15 to 1:30. So they got 30 some South Africans have 30 parts of omega-6s, inflammatory products, chemicals, as opposed to one of the anti-inflammatories. So that's one of the reasons why meat has got a really bad name, because grass-fed, healthy animals that haven't gone through the stress of being farmed actually have the right proportion of omega-3s and omega-6s. So that inflammation makes the body acidic as well. So then when the body is acidic, it'll also desperately wants to be alkaline, so it'll start pulling in minerals like calcium and magnesium from the bones and everywhere else to try and get it. But that acidic environment is also something where cancer will thrive. So lots of vegetables, a little bit of fruit, not too much fruit, because fruit is obviously, after all, full of sugar, even though it's natural sugar. But we've got to be very careful of that, and certainly fruit juice is not something that I would promote, or even dried fruit to unless it's very small amounts. So fruit, if we were to eat fruit as it was 500 years ago, we'd probably be okay, because apples were that size and kind of sour. Now they're that size and very sweet. So it's a totally different fruit that we're eating, where it's not, people think, oh, it's natural and healthy. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I don't know if I've answered your question, but hopefully I've touched on some of it.
To some extent, yes. One of the other things I wanted to touch on was the preponderance of more and more cancers. Then, okay. Are you saying that's coming?
Yeah, that's definitely, that's certainly diet related, because of the farmed meat that we're eating, the inflammatory meat that we're eating. So that goes back to what I said before. Certainly the high amount of lots of sugar that we're eating, which includes fruit actually in there. And then also just the fact that we're just not eating enough vegetables. So, basically the body will go haywire if we don't give it you need, for example, to run a car, you need, oil and water and petrol. We don't expect the car to run without those things. But for some reason or other, expect our bodies to run without proper food, what real food is. And so